My roommate's boyfriend walked into the kitchen and asked, "Did you eat my chocolate slice?" "Yeah, like an hour ago." "Why?" He dropped to his knees right there on the kitchen floor. For a second, I thought he was joking, but then he started dry heaving into the sink. "She ate it. The whole thing." His voice cracked. He ran out to the bathroom, slamming the door. That's when Delilah burst through the front door, still in her dental hygienist scrubs. She must have left work early. "Where's Killian?" she asked, breathless. "He texted to call 911 and something about you eating the last slice." Delilah pounded on the bathroom door. "Killian, baby, what's wrong?" He came out, eyes red, and showed her something. Delilah's face went from worried to devastated in seconds. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." My phone buzzed. It was our landlord. "Heard what happened. So sorry. Rent can wait this month." My stomach cramped suddenly, sharp enough to double me over. The chocolate cake. Another wave of nausea hit, and I barely made it to the kitchen sink. My roommate Damien rubbed my back, which was so out of character I'd have laughed if I wasn't puking. "She's been waiting 2 years to eat that cake," Killian muttered, looking at Delilah, who was now sitting on the floor crying her eyes out. 2 years for what? I gasped between heaves. Nobody answered. My phone rang. It was my mom. "Hey, I'm so disappointed in you. How could you do this?" She hung up before I could ask what she was talking about. "We need to go to the hospital," Killian said. "Now." "What? Why?" "It's just food poisoning." Delilah stood up, her face pale. "It's not food poisoning. Please, just trust me. We need to go now." Killian was already grabbing his keys. The cramping was getting worse. In the car, Delilah wouldn't even look at me. Killian kept checking his phone and wincing at whatever he saw. "What was in that cake?" I asked again, starting to panic. The pain was spreading. Delilah finally spoke, her voice hollow. "My future. We'll deal with it at the hospital," Killian said. At the ER, Killian ran ahead to talk to the intake nurse. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but she looked shocked and waved us through immediately. That's when I knew something was really, really wrong. Delilah looked like she might cry or scream or both. A doctor appeared with a portable x-ray machine. "We need to check your stomach contents immediately." "For food poisoning?" He exchanged a look with Killian and Delilah. "Not exactly. Let's just see what we find." A nurse started prepping an IV. "Any allergies I should know about?" she asked. "Medications? Latex?" She paused, looking at her clipboard. "Reactions to platinum or white gold?" "No," I answered, completely confused. They made everyone leave the room while they x-rayed my abdomen. The doctor studied the image on his tablet, zooming in on something. Killian's mom appeared in the doorway. She looked at me like I'd killed her dog. "Is it still intact?" she asked the doctor. "It's been in my family for 90 years. The room went silent except for the beeping machines. Delilah finally looked at me, her face a mask of controlled rage. "There's definitely a metallic object in your stomach," he whispered. I stared at him. "A what?" Delilah's face went red with anger. "You ate my engagement ring." What?" Killian cleared his throat. "I hid Grandma's ring in your favorite cake. I was going to propose. That was my cake, from my boyfriend, for our anniversary. It was on the middle shelf." The words tumbled out as my brain tried to catch up. "That's the communal shelf. Everyone knows that." "I was saving it for tonight." Delilah's voice rose. "You literally have your own shelf. Your name is on it in purple Sharpie." My stomach gurgled again. The ring was in there, supposedly worth thousands of dollars, floating around with the chocolate cake I thought was communal property. The doctor handed me a bottle of thick white liquid. "This should speed things along. You'll need to strain everything to recover the ring." Delilah started crying. Killian was still listing everything he had planned. His mom was FaceTiming with angry relatives. My roommate texted me, "This is why I label everything, even my water bottles." "Next time," I told Killian as another cramp hit, "maybe just use a ring box like a normal person." "There won't be a next time," Delilah screamed. The doctor cleared his throat. "Well, this is certainly going to be an insurance nightmare, destroying property worth thousands." "You're a thief," Killian's mom spat. Delilah wiped her tears. "Your type always takes what isn't theirs." As I sat there with the laxatives, I remembered something that would make them regret how they treated me. I reached for my phone in my pocket and pulled out the photo gallery, scrolling back to yesterday afternoon. There it was, the chocolate cake sitting right on the middle shelf of our fridge with my handwritten note taped to the white bakery box that said, "Happy anniversary, Brandon. Love me," in blue pen. I turned the screen toward them and watched their faces change. Killian went white first, then his mom, then Delilah, who grabbed the phone from my hand to look closer. The timestamp showed 3:47 p.m. yesterday, clear as day. Killian started opening and closing his mouth like a fish, trying to find words that wouldn't come out. He finally managed to stammer something about how Delilah had mentioned wanting chocolate cake last week, and he just assumed when he saw it. His mom snatched my phone from Delilah's hands, holding it close to her face and squinting at the screen. Her jaw tightened when she saw the timestamp and the note with my name on it. She handed the phone back without saying anything, but I could see her grinding her teeth. The doctor came back in carrying a clipboard full of paperwork, stopping short when he felt the tension in the room. He suggested maybe everyone should step outside while I rested and dealt with the medication. I shook my head and told him I wanted witnesses to stay because I needed to explain what really happened here. He looked uncomfortable but nodded and started filling out his forms while standing by the door. I took a breath and explained how Brandon had ordered the cake from Josiah's bakery downtown for our 2-year anniversary, paying $60 for the custom chocolate ganache with raspberry filling. I'd picked it up yesterday after work and put it in the fridge to surprise him tonight when he got home from his shift. Delilah's face crumpled as the pieces clicked together in her head. She turned to look at Killian with something between hurt and rage in her eyes. He wouldn't meet her gaze, just stared at his shoes like they were the most interesting thing in the world. His mom shifted her weight and changed tactics, saying if the cake was so special I should have labeled it better or put it on my personal shelf. I reminded her that my name was literally written on the note, and the middle shelf had been communal space for 3 years since I moved in. Everyone in the building knew the rules about personal shelves versus shared space. She pressed her lips together but didn't have a comeback for that. The nurse knocked and came in carrying a plastic collection kit and what looked like a strainer in a sealed bag. The room went dead quiet as she set everything on the tray table next to my bed. She gave me a look full of sympathy while explaining how to use the supplies when the time came. Killian's family all turned away, suddenly very interested in the medical posters on the walls. The nurse patted my shoulder gently before leaving. Delilah suddenly whipped around to face Killian, her voice rising as she asked why he didn't just buy his own cake, or at least check whose it was before taking it. Her hands were shaking as she spoke. Killian mumbled something about his original plan falling through when the jewelry store messed up the ring sizing, and he panicked. He admitted he saw the cake and grabbed it without thinking because he knew she loved chocolate. Delilah's face got redder with each word. My phone buzzed with a text from Brandon asking if I was okay, and saying saying he was leaving work early to come to the hospital. Relief washed over me knowing I'd have someone actually on my side soon, instead of these people treating me like I'd committed a crime. I texted him back quickly with the room number. The hospital administrator knocked and entered. A middle-aged woman in a navy suit carrying a tablet. She introduced herself and said she needed to discuss the insurance situation and billing for this unusual case. She explained that since this wasn't technically a medical emergency, but rather a voluntary retrieval procedure, insurance might not cover the full costs. The room got even quieter if that was possible. She pulled up some numbers on her tablet and showed them to Killian and his mom. The preliminary estimate was around $800 for the ER visit, x-ray, medications, and supplies. Killian's mom immediately crossed her arms and declared they wouldn't pay a cent of medical bills since I was the one who ate their property. Her voice had that sharp edge that rich people use when they think they're being wronged. I actually laughed, which made my stomach cramp again, and pointed out that their property was hidden in my property without my permission. She started to argue, but the administrator held up her hand and said liability would need to be determined later, but someone would need to handle the immediate costs. The administrator left us with forms to fill out and said she'd be back in an hour. Killian's mom was already on her phone, probably calling their lawyer or insurance company. Delilah sat down hard in the plastic chair by the window, putting her head in her hands. Killian stood there looking lost, caught between his angry mother and his devastated girlfriend. Another cramp hit and I doubled over, the medication starting to work. There's something strange about how fast everyone showed up. The landlord texting about rent, Killian's mom appearing at the hospital, even my own mom calling to yell at me. How did word spread so quickly about a cake and a ring? This was going to be a long, horrible afternoon, but at least I had proof that I wasn't the thief they claimed I was. The door burst open and Brandon rushed in holding a white paper bag from the bakery. He crossed the room in 3 quick steps and kissed my forehead before turning to face everyone else with a look that could freeze water. He pulled out a yellow receipt and held it up so everyone could see the $60 charge for a custom chocolate anniversary cake with special decorations. Killian's mom grabbed for the receipt, but Brandon pulled it back and took a photo of it with his phone first. The hospital administrator knocked and came back in carrying her tablet and a stack of forms. She cleared her throat and suggested we focus on the immediate medical situation first, since the financial and legal discussions could wait until after the patient was stable. She handed me several forms about the incident for hospital records and mentioned something about insurance claims that would need to be filed. My stomach cramped hard again, and I doubled over while Brandon rubbed my back. Delilah suddenly stood up and announced she needed air before rushing out of the room. Killian looked between his mom and me before following Delilah into the hallway, where their voices carried through the thin door. We could hear her asking why he didn't check whose cake it was, and him trying to explain about the jewelry store mix-up. His mom stayed in the room watching me like she expected me to somehow swallow the ring again, or maybe run off with it. Brandon pulled out his phone and called Marta, who picked up on the second ring. He put it on speaker and asked her about the apartment shelf rules from when she lived with us last year. Her voice filled the room as she explained that the middle shelf was always communal property, and everyone knew personal items went on labeled shelves only. She even remembered the exact meeting where we all agreed on it after someone ate Damien's special yogurt by mistake. Killian's mom started to argue, but Marta cut her off, saying she had photos from that time showing the shelf labels and communal areas clearly marked. The doctor knocked and came back in to check my vital signs and feel my stomach. He said the medication should start working within the next few hours and recommended I go home to wait since there wasn't anything else they could do medically. He wrote something on my chart about the foreign object ingestion and told the nurse to prepare discharge papers. Brandon helped me stand up slowly while another cramp hit, and I had to lean on him for support. Killian came back into the room alone with red eyes and his hair sticking up from running his hands through it. He walked over to where I was gathering my things and quietly said he was sorry for taking the cake without checking first. His mom immediately jumped up and grabbed his arm, telling him not to say anything else because I might be recording. She pointed at my phone sitting on the bed and said something about not admitting fault in front of witnesses. I hadn't been recording anything, but hearing her say that made me pick up my phone and start the voice recorder app right away. I made sure the red recording light was visible as she continued telling Killian about liability and not taking blame for anything. Brandon squeezed my hand as we walked past them toward the door with me still recording every word she said. The nurse brought a wheelchair, but I waved it off since I could walk fine between the cramps. We made it to Brandon's car and I finally stopped recording after getting 3 full minutes of Killian's mom explaining why he shouldn't apologize. The drive back to the apartment took 20 minutes with me curled up in the passenger seat trying not to think about what was coming next. Damien was waiting in the living room when we walked in and immediately showed me his phone screen. The building group chat was going crazy with people calling me a thief and saying I did it on purpose for attention or money. Someone had even started a poll asking if I should be evicted for stealing from other tenants. Damien scrolled through showing me comment after comment from neighbors I'd never had problems with before. One person suggested checking if anything else was missing from the communal areas, and another said they were putting locks on their shelf sections. Brandon took the phone from Damien and started typing a response, but I told him not to bother yet. We needed to focus on getting through the next few hours first, and then we could deal with the rumor mill. He helped me gather supplies from around the apartment, including magazines, my phone charger, a bottle of water, and the plastic strainer the hospital gave us. The bathroom felt smaller than usual as Brandon arranged everything within easy reach of the toilet. He offered to stay with me, but I shook my head and told him I needed to do this part alone since it was already humiliating enough. He kissed my forehead again and said he'd be right outside if I needed anything before closing the door behind him. The first hour passed slowly with just minor stomach cramps and nothing happening despite drinking tons of water. The second hour brought stronger cramps that had me gripping the edge of the bathtub and breathing through my nose. By the third hour, I was exhausted and ready to give up when finally something shifted in my stomach. 20 minutes later, I was holding the plastic strainer under running water, watching a small metal object emerge from things I really didn't want to think about. The ring was covered in stuff that made my stomach turn, but it was definitely there and looked intact. I put on the rubber gloves from the hospital and carefully picked it up to rinse it thoroughly under hot water. After drying it with paper towels, I sealed it in a plastic sandwich bag and washed my hands about 6 times. I texted Killian a photo of the ring in the bag with a simple message saying I had it and asking when he wanted to pick it up. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed with Killian's reply, telling me I needed to bring the ring to their place and apologize in person for stealing it. Brandon looked over my shoulder at the message and shook his head hard. He grabbed my phone phone and started typing a response, but I stopped him and deleted what he'd written. We weren't doing anything until they admitted what really happened here. I remembered my mom mentioning her friend Portia Justice, who worked as a legal aid attorney downtown. I found her number in my contacts and called while Brandon sat next to me on the couch. Portia answered on the third ring, and I explained everything that had happened from finding the cake to the hospital visit. She listened without interrupting, then told me to document absolutely everything and not return the ring until we had a written agreement. She said they had no right to hide property in my food without permission and cause all this trouble. Within an hour, Portia had drafted an email laying out all the facts about how they hid the ring in my cake without asking. She attached the photo I took of my anniversary cake with a note clearly visible on the middle shelf. Brandon had already gotten Marta to send over her statement about the shelf rules we'd always followed. Portia added everything to the email, including screenshots of the nasty messages people had sent me. She sent it to Killian and his mom with a read receipt requested. The response came back 2 hours later from Killian's mom threatening to sue me for emotional distress and damage to their family heirloom. Portia actually laughed out loud when she read it over the phone to me. She said they had absolutely no case and they knew it, which is why they were trying to scare me. 2 days later, the hospital bill showed up in my mailbox for $800. My insurance only covered part of it since they classified the ring removal as an elective procedure. Brandon immediately offered to help pay, but I wanted Killian and his family to take responsibility for what they'd done. I was sitting at the kitchen table staring at the bill when my phone rang with an unknown number. It was Josiah from the bakery where Brandon had ordered the anniversary cake. He'd heard about what happened from other customers who were talking about it. He offered to write an official statement confirming that Brandon had ordered and paid for a special anniversary cake with specific decorations. I thanked him and gave him Portia's email so he could send it directly to her. Armed with the bakery statement plus Marta's testimony and all the photo evidence we had collected, Portia sent them a formal demand letter. She made it clear they could either pay my medical bills and publicly correct the record about what happened, or we'd file a defamation suit. The letter was delivered by certified mail, so we'd know exactly when they received it. 3 days after the letter was delivered, my phone lit up with a text from Delilah. She wasn't angry anymore, just sad, and said she'd been waiting 2 years for Killian to finally propose. She admitted he'd messed up badly, but asked if we could work this out without lawyers getting more involved. Part of me felt bad for her, but then I remembered how she'd looked at me in the hospital. I texted back reminding her about the "your type" comment and how they'd all treated me like I was some kind of thief. She wrote back saying that was Killian's mom talking, not her, though she admitted she hadn't stopped it either. She said she was sorry for not standing up for me when she should have. A week later, Portia called to say a meeting had been arranged at her office with everyone present to negotiate a resolution. She said Killian's mom was bringing her own lawyer, which seemed way over the top but didn't surprise me at all. The morning of the meeting, I put on my most professional outfit, and Brandon drove me to Portia's office downtown. Someone needs to tell Killian's mom that legal aid attorney doesn't mean pushover who helps for fun. Portia came in ready to play chess while they were still learning checkers. We got there 20 minutes early, and Portia walked us through what would probably happen. She said their lawyer would try to intimidate us, but we had all the evidence on our side. Killian and his mom arrived right on time with a man in an expensive suit carrying a leather briefcase. Delilah came in 5 minutes later by herself and sat as far from Killian's mom as she could. The conference room felt too small with all of us crammed around the table. Portia started by laying out copies of all our evidence, including the photo, the bakery receipt, and Marta's statement. Their lawyer picked up each document and examined it carefully while Killian's mom whispered angrily in his ear. He finally set down the papers and cleared his throat to speak. He told Killian's mom in a low voice that the photo evidence was pretty clear, and the defamation angle could get expensive if we pursued it. She started arguing with him, but he held up his hand and pointed to the timestamp on the photo showing it was taken before the cake was eaten. For the next 2 hours, we went back and forth with their lawyer trying to get us to accept less, while Portia kept pushing for full medical costs, plus the social media correction. Killian sat there looking miserable while his mom kept whispering angry things in his ear, and Delilah stayed silent in her corner of the room. Brandon held my hand under the table the whole time, and I could feel him getting more tense with each ridiculous offer they made. Finally, their lawyer wrote a number on a piece of paper and slid it across to Portia, who nodded and showed it to me. It covered my full medical bills of $800, plus they'd post a correction on social media within 24 hours. I agreed, and we started signing papers while Killian's mom demanded to see the ring before anything was final. I pulled the plastic bag from my purse and she snatched it away to examine it with a jeweler's loupe she'd brought in her purse. She spent 5 minutes checking every angle and finally admitted it wasn't damaged, though she muttered something about needing professional cleaning after what it had been through. That evening, the social media post went up on Killian's mom's Facebook saying there had been a misunderstanding about whose cake was whose and apologizing for any confusion. It wasn't exactly a full admission, but it was enough to stop the nasty messages I'd been getting, and my coworkers stopped looking at me weird. A week later, Damien told me over breakfast that Delilah and Killian had broken up according to the building gossip network. He'd heard from the couple in 3B who heard from the maintenance guy that they'd had a huge fight in the parking lot, and Delilah threw the ring at him before driving off. I felt bad for her even after everything, because waiting 2 years for a proposal only to have it end like this must have been awful. Brandon surprised me that weekend by taking me to the fancy steakhouse downtown for our makeup anniversary dinner. We laughed about how our story was definitely more interesting than most couples who just had normal anniversaries with normal cakes that didn't have jewelry hidden in them. He ordered us chocolate cake for dessert, and we both checked every bite carefully before eating, which made our waiter look at us really confused. My mom called while we were walking back to Brandon's car and actually apologized for jumping to conclusions. Portia had filled her in on everything, including showing her the evidence we'd collected, and Mom admitted she should have trusted me instead of believing the gossip she'd heard from her book club friends. The next morning, I got a text from our landlord with a photo of new signs he was putting up in all the common areas about the updated fridge policy. Each apartment would have a clearly marked section with colored tape, and he was installing a camera in the kitchen to prevent any future incidents from making the building look bad online. About a month later, I saw Killian loading boxes into a moving truck when I got home from work. He avoided eye contact and hurried inside when he saw me, which was fine because I didn't really want to talk to him anyway. Delilah still lived in the building, and we'd just nod politely when we passed in the hallway or laundry room, but we never talked about what happened. The best part was when Marta called to ask if Killian's old room was available uncomfortable because she wanted to move back in. She'd been living with her sister across town but missed having her own space, and said she'd rather live with someone she trusted after hearing about the whole ring disaster. Having her move back made the apartment feel like home again, instead of the weird, tense place it had been for the past couple months. We spent her first night back eating Chinese takeout and labeling everything in the fridge with both our names just to be extra clear about whose food was whose. She even bought a label maker as a housewarming gift for herself, which made us both laugh until our stomachs hurt. Damien came over with a bottle of wine to welcome her back and joked that between the three of us, we probably had the most organized fridge in the entire city. Things finally felt normal again, and I could eat chocolate cake without thinking about rings or hospitals or angry mothers with jeweler's loops. Brandon and I started looking at apartments together since my lease was up in a few months, and we figured it was time to take that next step. We made a pact that when he eventually proposed, he'd use a normal ring box and definitely wouldn't hide it in any food items. The whole disaster had actually brought us closer together and shown me that he'd stand by me even when things got completely crazy. Marta said she'd be sad to see me go, but understood and promised to visit our new place once we found one. Brandon and I started looking at apartments the next week and found a perfect one-bedroom near his work with no shared kitchen to worry about. The landlord showed us around, and I made sure to ask about the fridge situation, which made Brandon laugh, but I wasn't taking any chances. We signed the lease 2 weeks later and started packing up my stuff from the old place. Marta helped me box up my kitchen things, and we triple-checked that nothing of mine was left in the communal areas. Damien decided to throw us a going-away party the night before we moved and ordered pizza for everyone in the building. He showed up with a gift bag full of label makers and pre-printed stickers that said, "Not yours," in big red letters. Everyone laughed, but I could tell he was actually going to use them because he'd already started labeling his milk cartons with security tape. The party was actually fun, and even some neighbors I'd never talked to before came by to wish us well. One of them mentioned they'd heard about the ring incident from the building group chat and couldn't believe Killian had hidden it in a cake. Brandon and I loaded the moving truck the next morning, and Marta promised to keep me updated on any building drama. Our new place was smaller, but it was ours, and we didn't have to worry about anyone taking our food or hiding jewelry in it. We spent the first weekend organizing everything, and I put all our food in one fridge that only we had access to. About a week after we settled in, Portia called to check how things were going. She mentioned she wasn't going to charge me for all her help because it was the most entertaining case she'd had in years. She mailed me her business card with a note saying to call if I ever needed legal help again, though she hoped I wouldn't need it. I thanked her and promised to recommend her to anyone who needed a lawyer. The whole incident had cost me a lot of stress, but at least I hadn't had to pay legal fees on top of everything else. Brandon and I were grocery shopping about 6 weeks after everything happened when I spotted Killian's mom near the produce section. She saw me at the same moment and her face went tight before she grabbed her cart and turned down another aisle. I watched her rush away, and honestly it felt good to see her practically run from me after how she'd treated me at the hospital. Brandon noticed and squeezed my hand, but we just kept shopping without saying anything about it. We were picking out pasta when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Delilah, and she wanted me to know she was engaged to someone new who had actually planned a real proposal with a ring box and everything. She said she was sorry again for how things went down and wished me well with Brandon. I showed him the text, and he shook his head at how fast she'd moved on, but I was glad she'd found someone better than Killian. I texted back that I was happy for her, and meant it because nobody deserved what happened to her, even if she'd been mean to me. About a week later, I stopped by the bakery to get Brandon's birthday cake, and Josiah recognized me immediately. He showed me their new security stickers they'd started putting on all special orders after hearing about our incident. He joked that we'd changed his business practices forever, and now every cake came sealed with tamper-evident tape. I laughed and told him it was probably a good idea anyway, since you never know what people might do. He gave me a discount on the birthday cake and made me promise to check it carefully before eating. Brandon and I decided to have people over to our new place about 2 months after moving in, and of course the ring story came up at dinner. Our friends couldn't believe it had really happened, and kept asking for more details about the hospital and the laxatives. Brandon did most of the telling while I added details, and everyone was laughing by the end, even though it had been horrible at the time. One friend asked if I'd really had to strain everything, and I nodded, which made everyone groan and laugh at the same time. The story had become funnier with time and distance from the actual events. Killian's mom brought a jeweler's loop to mediation like she was buying diamonds at a pawn shop, instead of getting back a ring that took a scenic tour through someone's digestive system. Talk about commitment to quality control. My stomach had been messed up for weeks after taking those industrial-strength laxatives the hospital gave me. I'd had to call in sick to work twice because of the lingering effects, and couldn't eat anything spicy or rich for over a month. My doctor ran some tests and said there was no permanent damage, but recommended I take probiotics for a while to help restore my digestive system. It took about 2 months before I could eat normally again without worrying about sudden bathroom emergencies. The hospital billing department called one afternoon while I was at work to confirm that Killian's family payment had cleared. The administrator remembered my case and said in all her years working there, mine was still the strangest situation she'd processed. She mentioned they'd actually had a staff meeting about it to discuss how to handle similar situations in the future. I thanked her for calling and felt relief that at least that part was completely over. About a week after that call, Marta texted me screenshots from social media that made my blood boil. Killian's mom had been posting in various family groups that I'd deliberately eaten the ring to extort money from them. She was telling relatives I was a thief who had planned the whole thing, which was completely insane. I forwarded everything to Portia, who immediately sent another cease and desist letter with threats of a defamation lawsuit. The post disappeared within 2 days, and Killian's mom blocked me on everything, which was fine because I never wanted to hear from her again. 2 weeks later, on our actual anniversary date, Brandon showed up at our new place with a big white box from Josiah's bakery and this huge smile on his face. He'd ordered the same exact chocolate cake we were supposed to have before everything went crazy, and we sat at our little kitchen table cutting it super slowly, checking every single bite before we ate it. We kept laughing about how paranoid we were being, using forks to poke around in the frosting first, and Brandon joked that we'd probably be doing this for the rest of our lives. Meanwhile, Marta had been hanging out at the old apartment more since she and Damien discovered they both had the same weird labeling habits, and she sent me pictures of how they'd reorganized the whole kitchen with color-coded zones and these laminated tags on everything. The place looked like a professional organizer had come through, with every shelf having clear boundaries marked with tape and signs saying exactly exactly whose space was whose. Damien even made a spreadsheet tracking expiration dates that he shared with everyone in the building, and people actually started using it after what happened with us. About a year later, Brandon took me to the park where we'd had our first date, and when we got to the bench where we'd first kissed, he pulled out a small blue box from his pocket. He got down on one knee right there in front of everyone walking their dogs and jogging by, holding up this beautiful ring that he made sure to show me was not hidden in any food products. I said yes before he even finished asking, and we both started crying and laughing at the same time, and some random lady walking by took pictures for us with our phones. When we planned our engagement party a few months later, we made sure the invitation specifically said we'd be serving cupcakes only, no cakes allowed, which confused all Brandon's work friends who didn't know the story yet. Everyone who did know thought it was the funniest thing ever, and Marta brought a cake-shaped piñata filled with candy just to mess with us, which actually ended up being the hit of the party. The wedding came together pretty fast after that, and about a week before the big day, I got a text from Delilah saying she'd love to come if I was okay with it, and that she was bringing her new husband Mark, who she'd met at a dental conference. They showed up looking really happy together, and during the reception, Delilah handed me a wrapped gift that turned out to be this fancy silver cake server with a little card that said, "Check thoroughly before eating," with a smiley face drawn on it. We actually use that cake server all the time now, and it always makes us laugh, sitting in our kitchen drawer next to all the regular utensils like it doesn't have this whole crazy history behind it. Killian's mom didn't come to the wedding, which wasn't surprising at all, but Brandon's cousin mentioned she'd sent a card through their mutual friend from church, just a basic congratulations card with her name signed at the bottom, no personal message or anything. During the reception, Brandon got up to give his speech and told everyone the shortened version of the ring story, making it sound like this romantic thing about how we defended each other through the weirdest crisis ever. People were laughing so hard that the photographer got all these great pictures of everyone at their tables just cracking up, and my uncle raised his glass and shouted something about unexpected anniversaries that got everyone cheering. Now when I think back on that horrible day in the hospital with the laxatives and the straining and everyone treating me like a criminal, it's actually kind of amazing how it changed everything for the better. Brandon and I got our own place way sooner than we planned. We learned to stand up for ourselves against people who tried to push us around, and we figured out that we could handle pretty much any weird situation together. We still joke about it sometimes when we're at restaurants and the waiter brings dessert, both of us doing this exaggerated inspection routine that probably makes us look completely crazy to anyone watching. Marta says we have the best how we got engaged story of anyone she knows, even though technically the proposal that actually counted happened a whole year later with no cake involved at all. That ring I accidentally ate is probably worth more than anything else that's ever been in my stomach, but the ring Brandon gave me means way more because it came with zero drama and 100% love. Turns out accidentally eating someone else's engagement ring, hidden in what I thought was my anniversary cake, was the best mistake I ever made, even if it did take months for my stomach to feel normal again, and even longer for the gossip to die down completely. Thanks for hanging out and wondering about all these questions with me today. It's always interesting seeing where curiosity takes us. Until next time. And hey, like the video, it helps more than you think.